1 in 6 GPs are failing to offer patients face-to-face appointments, according to a new survey of nearly 900 practices, despite repeated commitments by the NHS and the government to increase in-person consultations.
So before the pandemic, around 80% of GP appointments in England were done in person. That's fallen, with only 69% now held face-to-face.
Cambridgeshire, Hampshire and Greater Manchester saw less than 20% of their appointments held in person.
But there is still a demand for face-to-face primary care, with 77% of practices reporting an increase in patient requests.
So should GPs stop offering virtual appointments altogether? Joining us to debate this is Dr Murray, who's a huge advocate for virtual appointments, and Narinder Kaur, who says they are a waste of patients' time. Let's start with you, Doctor. What's the truth, in your view, about what is going on? Is this survey accurate? Is it right that 20% of GP surgeries are offering no face-to-face appointments, even though the NHS says they've got to?
I don't think there's any practices that are offering no face-to-face appointments. Some practices might be making more use of virtual or digital appointments than others. But actually, it should be a mix of both, in my view. We should be offering patients both online appointments, phone appointments and face-to-face appointments. And it should really be up to either the patient or the doctor to make that choice. And actually, we know that a lot of patients like remote appointments. So it's not about offering kind of no virtual appointments at all. I think it should be down to a matter of choice.
So if a GP surgery was offering no face-to-face appointments, that would be wrong?
That's absolutely right, yes, it would be.
And, can I just point this out there? So TJ on Twitter says, it took me 8 months to actually get a face-to-face GP appointment. Shocking service from my surgery. I think it's disgraceful. TJ says, I sat in the waiting room, not another person there. I still had to wait 20 minutes. That's virtually offering no face-to-face appointments, isn't it? Having to wait 8 months.
Yeah. No, I agree. But actually, there are other ways that you can get issues dealt with now. And we've got to remember that the old system of general practice wasn't great. We'd make everyone get on the phone at 8 o'clock in the morning, wait 40 minutes to get through, and then we're told there's no appointments left, bring back tomorrow. So actually, offering online tools allows us to better manage those patients that can be seen face-to-face versus those that don't.
Narinder, your experiences of virtual GP appointments?
Horrendous. I'd say horrendous, actually. And I'm a mother too. And actually, I think it took me about a year to see a GP face-to-face. And the whole triage, that kind of rigid blanket policy all round, doesn't fit every patient. So when you get on the e-consult, it's very hard. You know, an hour later, then you get a phone call, then you get another phone call. And by that time, it's been 4 hours, and you think, I could actually just walk to the surgery. And in my experience, not seeing a GP face-to-face, I ended up in A&E. Because I kept calling, they'd call me back, I'd say, I've got stomach pains. They thought it was one thing, wrote a prescription, sent it online to the pharmacy, get home, take it, didn't work, I ended up in A&E for 10 hours.
You didn't wait a year, though?
For face-to-face during lockdown, I didn't see a GP. Not face-to-face.
It wasn't a stomach ache and a year later you went to A&E?
No. The problems were ongoing for several months.
Yeah.
Right.
And they kept thinking it was menopause, it was this, because they kept doing it over the phone. Eventually, the pain was so bad, I ended up in A&E because it was nothing what the GP thought, and it was actually a burst ovarian cyst. So it's actually a very dangerous situation when GPs have they have the power to decide, we will see you face-to-face, we won't see that patient. But as a patient, I would also like to be involved in that decision-making, that I know my body and actually I need to see a doctor today.
Dr Murray, respond.
Yeah, so, I mean, we all know that general practice is struggling. There are not enough GPs. OK,
and I appreciate that as well.
There's less GPs than there were pre-pandemic, about 700-800 less GPs than there were before.
And presumably saying everything's got to be face-to-face will make things worse?
It would make it impossible. We couldn't go back to the old system of saying everything could be face-to-face. Because actually,
what
demands increase as well.
To go face-to-face to virtual? Because virtual, you are sat there on an e-consult form. The doctor is still seeing you 10 minutes on a virtual call. What's the difference to seeing you face-to-face and actually patient satisfaction?
Well, actually, we've got very good evidence that patients like this. There's about 70 or 80% patient satisfaction, very good or excellent, because actually a lot of patients... So imagine that patient that needs a repeat prescription of contraception. In the old days, we used to make them take half a day off work, come into a physical building just to get contraceptive. That's a waste of time. A 22-year-old with anxiety, actually, it's a massive barrier to come into a GP surgery and sit in front of a GP and explain their symptoms.
Well,
actually, those sort of things are much better handled.
And of course, those do work. However, it's that one-size-fits-all doesn't fit all. And some of us, like myself, and who aren't very good on we want to see a doctor face-to-face.
I agree, which is why it should be both. So we should offer online and we should offer...
Sometimes the doctor needs to actually see the patient to actually work out what's really wrong.
Yeah, but actually, and that's part of the reason to get that tools like eConsult, where we gather information up front, it allows us to identify those patients that need to be seen face-to-face. So that child with abdominal pain, I need to see that child today, versus actually someone with a rash, send me a photo and I can manage that remotely, or it can come in next week.
Cornish Maid, I don't know, I'm sure that's not her real name, on Twitter says, I prefer virtual appointments as I have mobility issues and it can be a stressful experience trying to get to GP surgeries for a 10-minute appointment. We were listening this morning to a Labour MP talking about a lack of bus routes, right? And so you put a lack of bus routes and needing to be face-to-face. You can see in rural areas why perhaps virtual, and if you've got mobility issues, a virtual appointment actually is helpful. But Dr. Moore, can I ask you, do you ever worry that you may misdiagnose or write something off as something else, as is Narinda's fear here, that you may fall foul of the system?
With any kind of remote consultation, that is a risk, so even with telephone consultation. But actually, it's not that the computer is deciding what gets through. There's a human at the end of all of these. And actually, these are highly trained clinicians, GPs with many years' experience. So actually, you can tell if you're at all, if your kind of senses are going, actually, this.
I don't think you can tell anything on a telephone call. I think it's very dangerous. And actually, certainly in my case and many others, you end up in A&E and actually you've wasted more time. You've wasted so much time on telephone calls, on the computer, and then you end up actually having to see a doctor 6 months down the line, and actually that problem's still there. I think it's actually dangerous, and I think, unfortunately, most surgeries don't offer both.
Well, let's see what Twitter had to say, shall we?
Always
the arbiter.
We should.
It's a time to... I say that with my tongue in my cheek. It's time to scrap virtual GP appointments. That was the question. 70% said yes. And 30% said no.
I'm with Dr. Ling. Look, we don't want to scrap them, you know, entirely.
Not entirely.
Sometimes they're really good.
30% like them.
30% like them. There you go. Thank you to both of you for joining us this morning.